What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabro, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well out there.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, first show 2023, what you been playing?
So I've had a little downtime. I basically on vacation from my full-time job this month, so been trying to clear out some of this backlog stuff. I completed Crisis Core, the Final Fantasy Crisis Core remake.
Oh, nice.
And that was enjoyable. I forgot how at some point I was like kind of over the grindy of the missions and everything, so I was kind of trying to mainline it, and I forgot how like difficult those final bosses could be, especially for everyone who knows, and I know you know because you played the original, that fighting Sephiroth on the bridge when you can't move anywhere can be pretty difficult if you're not up to level or up to par. And obviously, if the roulette is not giving you anything, it's going to be a rough time. So I had to replay that section a couple times. And the final boss, also, I don't remember being so difficult. But again, when I played it years ago, I took my time with every mission, maxing out as many of my stats as I could. This one, again, I tried to kind of rush it through, so it took a little longer. But I completed it. I was interested to see if anything was changed story-wise. Because a big theory that we've all been talking about, especially us, and especially you caught on first, is that they're obviously tweaking the story of the remakes. And Crisis Core Reunion obviously it's hard. It's more of a remastered into this new trilogy that they're giving us. That's why they're doing with the voice actors. They resynced it and everything like that. But nothing that I noticed was changed story wise. It all played out the same, which may or may not throw some theories off of some stuff that we've already seen in the remake and in part 2 that's coming out soon. But all in all, it's an enjoyable game. I'm really glad that this game finally is just accessible. I have no intention on replaying it anytime soon, but that combat was really nice to get in there, really fun. It's simple. Again, I wish it was given maybe a little bit more love, maybe a full-on remake, because walking every 2 seconds, entering combat mode in those long hallways gets a little tiring after a while. It gets a little annoying, and the enemy variety is not the biggest there. So, but all in all, I thought it was really fun. It was cool. It really got me in the mood to just continue that Final Fantasy thing. I'm holding off because we may get 2 Final Fantasy games this year, or if not, we'll get 16 this year and 7 Part 2 at some other point. But a big thumbs up for me. Again, I'm really glad that the game just exists now, future-proofed for most of it. The only other game I've really been playing, I've been playing a bunch of other little things on my Steam Deck. Obviously, Vampire Survivor still, a couple old N64 games, revisiting that kind of stuff. But the other thing that's kind of come, it's my once-a-year itch to play Fortnite. Been doing a little bit of that, grinding out the Battle Pass, getting the characters, skins. Right now, really, I just wanted to get the Doom guy in there and have him just sort of all collected to get all my colors and stuff like that. And there's not much more else to say. I just still cannot believe this game sometimes. I mean, as I'm partnered up with a guy who's playing as Kratos. I was Doom guy, and Darth Vader did the My Hero Smash and killed us. It's an absolute a nonsense show, but good on them. The other game that most of my time's been going to, and I've just kind of started it, so I'm still under 10 hours. I've been playing the One Piece Odyssey game that came out, the new One Piece game. I'm a huge One Piece fan. I usually don't play these One Piece games because they're usually not that they're not good, they're just usually really mediocre to mid. The only thing is, I had seen the original trailer for this, I don't know, about a year ago when it released. Didn't watch any of the trailer, then I downloaded the demo when that released, and I had no idea, and that's my fault for not watching the trailers or even looking up this game. I had no idea this was a turn-based game. It's an RPG. I had zero idea until I started the demo, and as soon as I played the demo and I started doing it, I said, no, this is a buy for sure. Just because it's a simple RPG, a simple turn-based game, but there's so much One Piece love in it, and it also it does a lot of the same tropes as other RPGs do. You start off really strong, something happens, and now you have to re-grind, which I hate that a little bit, but you're kind of getting your abilities quickly. but it also it helps in the fact that the crew's already together, so I don't have to start with one guy, recruit somebody else, and slowly build up the crew. No, everybody knows each other. You're given, I think, you only have 4 spots during battle, but I think you have like 6 of your guys, 7 of your guys. I'm missing 1 or 2 crew members that you have to get later on. But having just that crew there off the bat, that have the dynamic, they don't have this weird getting to know each other thing. This takes place somewhere in the lore of One Piece. It's original story, sort of. I compare it a lot to like Chain of Memories, in Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, because you do these things when you go to this realm called Memoria, and you play basically sections of the anime, some movies, and so you're reliving some of that stuff with an overall arching story that's new. So very Kingdom Hearts if you think about it, where it's like you had the Castle Oblivion, then you'd have these sections that you were playing in Agrabah and all these places. So really fun. I think it's simple, really easy. The biggest complaint I've seen a lot of people complaining is how easy it is, and it is. I've kind of just I haven't had to grind anything. I've kind of just been enjoying it. You know, it's not random battles. You see the enemies, so I've been fighting a couple enemies. Nothing too spectacular. You know, I'm fighting a lot of small grunts and scorpions. It's just also just an absolute nonsense of a game that is One Piece also. You know, I have a reindeer, a lady who makes hands come out of nowhere, and a guy who uses a slingshot. So it's absolutely, it's a nuts show. But if you're a fan of One Piece and a fan of turn-based games, I think this game might be for you. It's actually really, really solid. So that's where all my time's been, just kind of, you know, enjoying some comfort food in a sense. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so I've been kind of jumping around and seeing. This is kind of like a down period for me. There's nothing really new coming out, so I'm kind of just playing stuff on my backlog, kind of jumping around amongst a whole bunch of different things. One thing is that I got it for essentially free because someone game shared it with me. So I've been playing Berserk and the Band of the Hawk, and I'm a big Berserk fan, so I was like down to give it a shot at least. I knew it was probably not going to be the greatest, just because I know Berserk fans, generally speaking, haven't really had an amazing game in a while. I know there's like a game from back in either the Dreamcast or PS2 days that was pretty solid and people generally like. But this game I didn't hear too many good things about, so I was like, all right, this game's probably not going to be that good. And it's basically, it's another Koei Tecmo Musou game. So if you played like Hyrule Warriors or Dynasty Warriors or literally any of those games, I think like there's a Fire Emblem one too, I think. They're all pretty much essentially the same game. The difference is this one is playing through some major story arcs from Berserk. It's pretty much the Golden Age arc for the most part, and it kind of dives into the arc right after that, which I cannot speak at because it gets very spoilery very, very fast. Yeah. But it's a really good time, generally speaking, if you are just like looking to go through that story, but at the same time, like the gameplay, I just can't get into Musous. Like no matter what, I just get so bored when I play Musou games, and my hand starts cramping up because it's just non-stop slashing, fighting waves of enemies. It's just not my thing. So you know, I kind of play in small little spurts. So maybe total, I played like maybe an hour 15 in 3 different sittings. Like I play in very short spurts because it's just, it's not that it's bad, it's just, it's a Musou game. So if you like Musou games, and especially if you like Berserk, I think you'll rock with the game. If you don't know anything about Berserk, I wouldn't even bother with this game. And especially if you just don't like Musou games, don't even bother. I've also been playing God of War, the original one, on the cloud streaming thing. That and I've also been playing around more with that in general, just to kind of get a vibe. I've played a couple games like that. It's not bad. Some games I've noticed are better suited for it than others. Like I wouldn't play a racing game like that personally, or something that needs to be hyper responsive, like maybe like a multiplayer shooter or something like that. But generally speaking, kind of like a hack and slash walking around type thing. It's performed well enough. I have a wired Ethernet connection, so it's not bad. And I haven't had any crazy like artifacting or visual things that kind of give away that it's a streaming game. It's maybe this ever so slightest bit of latency at times. But generally speaking, it's a good time. You know, the original God of War, it's not the best of that trilogy, but it kind of just sets up a lot of important things, and you see a lot of iconic characters in there, and it's a relatively straightforward game. what I forgot is how many abilities you get in this game. It's like I forgot how like structured around different random abilities that have not appeared since basically this original trilogy. But being able to freeze people with like Medusa and all that, it's pretty cool. And yeah, so you basically just go like section by section, you kill everything there, you go to the next section, you kill things there. Here's another big guy, now you kill him. And so it in some ways it's way different than these new God of War, obviously, but at the same time, like that spirit is still kind of there. It is very interesting seeing such a like different iteration of Kratos now that I'm much older and removed from that, because that's who Kratos was once upon a time, and that's all we knew. And now kind of having seen this kind of deeper, remorseful, pained Kratos, to go back to this guy who just is like constantly screaming at the sky, like man shakes hand at sky type dude, like it's just interesting to play that. But you see some of the trappings of what the franchise is going to become in it. So I'm going to stick by it, see how far I can get before I'm kind of like over it. Another game I've kind of dabbled with just because I kept hearing people talk about it and I just wanted to try it was Marvel Snap. I'm not a phone gamer, but and I'm not really into card games like that. But I do like Marvel quite a bit. So I was like, let me give it a shot. I actually like it quite a bit for what it is. My main thing why I like it is that if you play it, and you don't even have to play it a ton, there's tons of free stuff in it. So you don't really need to put money in there. I haven't really even bumped up into a situation where it's like I was like pressured to do so. There's of course a store that you can like spend all this currency and buy cards and upgrades and stuff like that. But for the most part, they allow you some degree of level progression. You can do as many battles as you want. You can collect tons and tons of cards and all these different characters, and they upgrade, and you get different variants of the different characters you have, all for free essentially if you just play it. So not bad for a free-to-play game. Could be much worse, having seen what the phone app space can be like. It's not like a main game of me. I maybe play a match or two a day, and upgrade my cards whenever I have the currency to do so. But it's okay. Like I like it. I can see why it's like addicting to some people. If you're into, especially if you're into games like a Hearthstone or Slay the Spire, and if you like Marvel characters, then I think you're gonna dig it. Like it's pretty casual card game. It's literally just like this card has this power. It might have an ability with it. You play certain cards at certain times. You have your hand. You draw cards. And then you try to basically win there's 3 areas on the board. Whoever has the most power in that area, which is your power adds up with the characters that you have on it. You win that area. You can play certain cards on certain turns depending on how much energy you're available that turn and how much energy it costs to like cast that character. And then if you win 2 out of 3 areas, you win the game. And there you go. It's really simple, really fun, though. I can see why it's addicting. Not something I'm probably going to play a ton more of, but I liked dabbling with it. And then lastly, I've been playing Dark Souls 3, and that's kind of been my main game. Wow. And I haven't had it for a while, but again, somebody game shared it with me. And so I finally got a chance to kind of dive into that. And I haven't really played Dark Souls. So I played Demon Souls when it came out, the remake on PlayStation. Didn't play a ton of it. I played the hell out of Elden Ring, just like you. And then Dark Souls, I played Dark Souls 1 back in the day. And maybe 2, I can't remember, but definitely 1. And it was just, it was brutal for me. But I haven't actually ever played Dark Souls 3. And so I was excited to jump in to see, like, one thing, like how does it compare to now that I've like really gotten a sample for Elden Ring and then gotten a hang of how to play that, like how does it feel compared to Elden Ring, and like has any of that skill translated whatsoever? And I'm pleased to announce that yes, it has transferred a little bit. I was able to one-shot the intro boss, which was a hell of a lot better than I thought I was going to do. Not one shot, but like one try.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was, and I've been able to basically make relatively steady progress. Like it's tough, but I can tell it's probably the easiest Dark Souls game I've ever played. But it's like it's somewhere in between like Elden Ring. Like I find it less difficult than like Bloodborne at times. Certainly less difficult than Sekiro. But no, I'm having a good time with it. It's really fun. I like the linearity of the world. Like Elden Ring is really awesome of like how expansive it is, but I do like the linearity of it where you kind of just go section by section, There's lots of places to explore, but I don't find the aimlessness of it. Thankfully, that you see in a lot of like open world games these days, where it's like you can go in a million different directions, but it's like I don't really feel motivated to go anywhere because I don't know what anything is. Here, it kind of funnels you in one main direction, and they throw a lot of things at you, and there's tons of rooms on the side and items you can collect and little pathways that you can unlock. And I like that. It's like it's not the widest thing in the world, but it's very deep, and that's what I really do just appreciate what FromSoft does. And this is the first time I think I'm going to make some degree of progress. I made it to my next boss, and they washed me, but I got them halfway, and I only tried them once because they're really far away from my last bonfire. So I'm gonna have to find a closer bonfire to them and see if I can, chip at them a little bit more. But so far, I'm feeling good about it. I'm really enjoying it, and I like it because I think in my older age, and now that I've played Elden Ring, I think I have a patience for a game like this, very specifically, that is well crafted, that is just asking certain things of you. I think I have more patience for that as opposed to like super big open world games that I liked when I was much younger, that like I could just spend 120 hours walking around. I don't have the patience for those things as much anymore, so I can appreciate just something that's like I can just die 20 times, but I kind of figure out things here and there over time. And I think that's kind of ultimately what it takes to kind of get through those games. So generally speaking, I'm feeling good about it, and I'm liking it a lot. Not that I'm going to say highly recommended, because again, everybody knows Dark Souls 3, and if you were going to play it, you probably would have played it by now. So
no, it's exciting to hear that. It's funny because I just reinstalled Elden Ring, because I do want to attempt to at least give my final push at it. But the previous Souls games is something I've been wanting to, for the same thought that it's like, well, I think I can maybe go backwards now and do some of these Dark Souls games.
Yeah, I'm ultimately trying to build to Sekiro. It's just I played Sekiro, and it was so far from what I'm able to do. And right now, I can kind of suss out what level I'm at. Like, I'm kind of at like a Elden Ring, DS3, maybe Neo level. And I'm just not ready for something like Sekiro. Sekiro's crazy. Like, that's a wild game.
Yeah, with all the mobility too.
Yeah, I'm too far from that. I need to get good before I can jump into something like that. So I'm ultimately just, if I can beat DS3, then I'm probably gonna try to go for all the FromSoft games eventually. But that's like my main thing. Like, if I can get through DS3, let's see. But again, I'm very early in it right now, so it could go left very quickly. It's still, as much as I think it is probably the easiest of the Dark Souls games I've played, just because it feels a lot better. The hitboxes aren't as ridiculous as like the first one, and I think it's just a better designed game overall. It's still brutally difficult. Don't get it twisted. Like, it's still no joke, but I think it's a lot more reasonable than like maybe some of the earlier ones.
Yeah, understandable.
All right, so let's move into the stories. So the first one's going to be a little different than type of stories we normally talk to, but it's pretty connected. The long-awaited HBO adaptation of the critically acclaimed PlayStation game The Last of Us has finally released its first episode. Actually, it's going to release its second episode today, the day that we're recording. If it isn't out already, I don't know if they drop at a certain time or whatever.
9 p.m. Eastern.
9 p.m. Eastern. Okay, cool. So it's going to be dropping tonight. And I just basically want to discuss our thoughts about this. This is something we discussed quite a bit. There are several PlayStation games or first-party games that are in active development for show adaptations. It was The Last of Us. I think God of War with was it
Amazon?
It was Amazon, and then Horizon with Netflix, something like that. And so I know there's like 3 in development, but this was the first one that was coming. It was HBO. Neil Druckmann was involved. We knew Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, like an amazing cast. And so I remember you and I talking about this and basically saying, like, this one has the best chance. Like, if there was going to be a video game adaptation show that was going to work, I think it was going to be this one. And I'll just get into my thoughts real quick. I thought it was a hit, personally. I thought they nailed it. They did what they had to do. I think the acting was on point. What I like about it was with shows, I think they have to straddle this weird line where a straight one-to-one adaptation, especially for something like Last of Us, which is already so cinematic, doesn't always make the most sense, because again, it is Last of Us, the game already exists, and so a one-to-one adaptation doesn't necessarily need to happen. I'm down for them to make changes. I just want those changes to make sense. And I think, generally speaking, every change that they made was either for the benefit or at least made sense enough. They made some major changes to the spores, which I think there's absolutely room for discussion there in terms of like whether they should have did that or not. I think that's kind of up in the air. I'm willing to discuss that with you. But then there's other things like that they did specifically in terms of contextualizing Joel's daughter's like life. I forget her name. I apologize, but
Sarah. Yeah,
Sarah's life a little bit more, where I think it made the impact even more, and I think in the events of one, not to get into spoiler territory, not that, I mean, again, the game came out in 2013, so figure it out, guys. I think things like that, like adding context, adding these neighbors, I think kind of build out that world a little bit more, that I think only worked to its benefit. Generally, I thought the production value was solid. The set pieces were good. Boston looked great. I loved being able to see actually like some war scenes, because you hear a lot about the Fireflies and what is their name? That Boston militarized group. I forget their name, but those group, you hear about them engaging with each other. You see like some scenes here and there. This one, you really do get to see the level of conflict, that it's like open conflict between these groups, and I think it contextualizes a little bit of why the need for smugglers and to protecting Ellie and why they're taking this job and why they're moving the way they do. I think it makes it make a lot more sense. What was your thoughts about the show overall?
Yeah, overall, I was actually very happy with it. Again, it walked this fine line, and we always knew where, how do you recreate something that is so cinematic? That I was like, man, for them to nail it, it needs to be almost a shot-for-shot remake, and also needs to expand it in certain aspects, and we were always pretty positive, especially with how involved Neil Druckmann is with this. Then I also watched the Uncharted movie forever ago, and I was
he involved with that?
He, not as much as he is here. I think okay. in this he is.
He's straight directing some episodes.
He's straight directing.
Yeah.
Like he's there with them, and he's helping writing and everything like that. Where the Uncharted movie, he was very, very hands off with it. Gotcha. But when I saw that was the biggest thing I could compare it to. I was like, well, yeah. Naughty Dog, Uncharted movie, Naughty Dog, Last of Us show, and they went super creative freely on the Uncharted movie. That's its own conversation. They did almost the opposite, where it was almost so bizarre and freaky, where I was like, wow, this is line for line almost.
Yeah, it's close.
The big one I always point out, just because it's one of my favorite lines ever, is when he asks his daughter, where did you get the money to fix the watch? But I think in the game she says, "Buy drugs. I sell hardcore drugs." That line, my wife hates it because I constantly say it to her for no reason. But the fact that they hit that line from it's so crazy. And yeah, so overall, I'm very happy with it. I'm very excited to see where it goes. I know a lot of people are positive. We've only seen one episode. It could easily, in the next, I think it's 8 episodes that are going to be coming out, it could fall apart. It could go something drastic. Yeah. I don't think so. I don't hope. If they keep this, this rate, then I understand. And even some of the changes, I wasn't completely upset about. I do notice that they're expanding on things that we understood in the game. We always understood that even prior to meeting Ellie, Joel has done questionable things.
Yeah.
And that was never expanded on in the game. In this one, he's slinging dope, he's dealing drugs, and he's blackmailing, and we always knew he was shady, whatever him and Tess were doing. But you see him be a little bit more brutal at that beginning, when he when they killed the young girl because she was infected, and he just throws her body in there. Joel's doing whatever he needs to do to get rations, whatever side job or quote unquote professional job that Fedra gives him to do. He does it, and I like that a lot, and I know there was some people who felt, they're like, why are they making him seem so, I'm like, well, he's not a good guy. Yes, he's the protagonist of the first game, but he does a lot of questionable things. For those who played the game, obviously you know what goes on later on, and especially the ending.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting. Bella Ramsey was always a character that I didn't know if she was gonna really fit Ellie. And not really the aesthetic. I don't understand why they don't style her hair a little bit more like Ellie in the game. That's confused me. But I'm super impressed on how she embodied that. I'm really surprised. Just how exact she almost got it. So I'm really happy with her performance. I think almost all the performances I've been happy with. The person who's playing Tommy, I know we've only seen a little bit of him. The actress who plays Tess, I'm a little iffy on. I'm not sure why they didn't get the original actress. She might have been busy. There is some weird sort of disconnect with me and that version of Tess. I'm not sure what it is yet. We haven't seen too much of her, so I'm gonna really allow it to. Well, I guess I'm trying to avoid spoiler. As long as she's on the show, I will allow her full performance before I judge it. But everyone else, I think, is surprisingly really been nailing their characters, and I'm excited to see where else this goes forward. And the changes they've done has been a little weird. I don't understand the removal of the spores to replace it with, I forget what they call it, like the tentacle vine thing they're gonna replace it with. But it makes sense. It's not something I'm distraught. Am I upset I'm not going to see them put gas masks on? I'm not really. I don't know what the fuss is about that. You want them to see. I don't know why you guys want to see them put their masks on to go through 2 rooms and then take it back off. Doesn't really make sense to me, but that is what it is for them. But overall, I think I'm really happy. I'm looking forward to it. I wish they didn't do this weekly release. I understand why they're doing this weekly release. I completely get it. But I think everything has been just so exactly where I was hoping it was, at least. And it's even blown me away in a little bit. And I like the small Easter eggs, almost like they're doing to, not Easter eggs, but like hints on how this spread so quickly. There's that big flower theory. They keep mentioning the way flour and all that stuff is.
Oh, yeah.
On how something so simple like that's in every household could be spreading, and just it's a lot of the small details. The big scene that really got me when I was like, they got this, was prior to Sarah's death, and that that happens in the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes. There's a scene where it's Tommy, Joel in the car, and she's in the back seat, and in the game we moved that on the right stick. We moved the camera there, and we're looking around left and right. I think the way that they switch constantly from first person through the actress's eyes to everyone else's eyes to passing the people who were waving down for help, I think once I saw that translated so perfectly to the point where where there's the car crash and they need to run by foot. When I saw that I was like, that's a complex scene to do, not only story wise but film wise. The framing and the pacing. That's when I knew. I was like, they might have this. They actually might have this, because I think it was done very, I don't know if tastefully is the word, but very honorable to the game. So I'm really excited to see how much more this will make me fall in love with The Last of Us.
Yeah, and I was kind of giving it some thought, and kind of going back to the way, or some of the upset, feeling some people have towards maybe some of the not alterations, but maybe seeing more explicit things about Joel. But I think what they're doing is we don't have, and using this show, we don't have 15 to 20 hours to kind of have these small conversational prompts as you're wandering around the city and collecting things to expand the character of these people. So they have to be more explicit with things. That's just the natural limitations of like cinema versus a video game. You spend more time in a video game kind of wandering around, and so they can have these small quips. But if you played the game, I played the games very recently, and there are some horrific things that Joel alludes to having participated in. So when people are like, oh, they basically didn't like to see him so explicitly being a drug dealer. And that was a little confusing to me, because it's like, if you look at the original game, there's that point where they go to that city. I forget what city it is specifically. But they get attacked by the people who are essentially human traffickers, kind of. Mm-hmm. And Joel basically alludes to the fact that him and Tommy did that once upon a time as well. Or at least ambushed people, not necessarily dismembering them, but at least we're ambushing and killing and robbing people. And he pretty much kind of openly admits that, with great shame, so he's not happy about it. But by that point, we're hours into the game, you've kind of fallen in love with the character, and so you buy it, enough where you're just like, there's just a messed up world that leads people to make messed up choices. And this guy, he's not the best guy, but like he's trying to change. And so the fact that like he's moving some pills in LZ, and people are like, no, this is a step too far. It's like it goes back into that weird Joel affair that caused people to get so upset with Last of Us 2. That was always so strange to me, just because like he's this tortured soul that wants to be that good father that he feels like maybe he never got the chance to be, but at the same time, like he's always kind of been a scumbag, you know what I mean? Like he's not like a bad dude, exactly. But he's a scumbag hustler, and he finds his way to the money, and I think they did a great job showing the fact that like at the end of the day, at least up until the point that he meets Ellie, he was a guy that's going to make do by any means necessary, whatever that involves. So what I liked, they showed he had multiple income streams. He's involved with the drug stuff. He's smuggling stuff. He's working with Tess, and they have their deals, and they're bringing things in to get to the truck to ultimately see his brother. So he's a good guy that does not so good things for generally good motivations. That's Joel kind of defined right there. And I think they did a great job kind of setting that up pretty quickly on. So they're less subtle about it, where they're like, yeah, like you don't know too much about Joel until by the end of the game you've kind of gotten little touches here and there about like his character, really. But here, I think they've done a better job where they kind of just jump into it faster. So before you even leave Boston, I think you get a really good sense for the type of dude you're dealing with, which I think is perfect to set him up and to kind of contrast him with Ellie, who's this kind of brash person who's very open and loud, unlike Joel, but at the same time is incredibly inexperienced. She hasn't really seen the world in the same way he has, and she's been through some horrific stuff herself. But yeah, she hasn't been outside a lot of these Fedra, that's their name, Fedra control, or the Fireflies control, and yeah, so I think they're doing generally a very good job, and I think this is honestly probably the best case scenario, kind of the fact that I feel like they didn't fumble it. It's not an easy thing to do. I think this is exactly what they like. I'm still generally not a proponent of the need to do these live action adaptations, but if you're going to do it, the fact that they've worked so closely with the person who created the original, having Neil Druckmann involved, because again, he is a director, with the mocap and the line delivery, he's directing films, effectively interactive films. So bringing him into the show making process, I don't think it's this crazy logical leap for them. So I'm glad that they seem to have done it right this time, brought in the right people. The casting seems generally right. Yeah, there's some people who I need more information. Like, yeah, we'll see with Tess. Generally I was happy with her. I just want to see. And then yeah, Tommy, we haven't gotten enough on. Only thing is, Tommy does not look like a younger brother to me. Like when I saw them in the kitchen there, at least in the kitchen, he did not look like the younger brother. And I feel like to some extent, the kind of like veteran younger brother and then the grizzled older brother of Joel, that dynamic was just so masterfully done in the video games. I want to see how that kind of translates with a guy who just looks older, but who knows. They did kind of age up Pedro Pascal a little bit to look a little older in the current day, so maybe by the time we see Tommy at that point they'll look more in line with what their ages are supposed to be. But that was the only thing I took away. It was like, this guy, that screams Big Brother if I've ever seen him, the way he was kind of messing with him. But yeah, not a con, just kind of like a nitpick. But yeah, generally really happy with it, and I'm excited to continue watching it and kind of see. And I also want to see how far they take this also. You would imagine throughout the season they're probably going to adapt all of Last of Us 1, I'm assuming. My question is, do they want to go beyond that? I don't know. I'd be very curious to see if they ever make it to Touch 2.
That's the big thing, because from what they've said, I watched a few interviews, and the season 1 is supposed to recap the full game and the Left Behind DLC.
Yeah, okay.
Which we know because they casted. I don't remember Ellie's friend.
Yeah, they already mentioned her too.
Yeah, so they mentioned her, and there's a casting for her, so obviously that's going to be incorporated in an episode at some point too. I think I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you. I don't know how you do Last of Us 2, a second season, because they've talked about how they also don't want to. There's two things I picked up from that interview was they're like, season 1 is going to be the first game. The other thing they said is they do not want to tell a story that was not told in the games. So we're not going to get at least
like a spin-off.
Yeah, it's not going to be a spin-off season. Maybe we'll get a spin-off show, but not a spin-off game. So if there's a season 2, it has to be Last of Us Part 2. Which that would probably take 2 seasons to tell, in my guessing.
Likely,
but
because it's multiple, perspectives and Abby
because
and
the two
that.
angles with Abby. So, I'm curious to see where this goes. I'm curious to see if they're gonna just. I think with already it being like the second biggest HBO premiere, I think it's gonna be pretty quickly gonna be greenlit for a season 2. I just don't know how you translate, especially if this. Depending what they do with Joel, that's obviously the big thing. Is how does this show leave you feeling about Joel?
Yeah.
That especially they're gonna obviously solidify that Joel and Ellie relationship to then. I mean, it's pretty common knowledge to then take one of those characters away from us. So I'm curious to see where it is. I'm just happy to see where this kind of goes, and I'm hoping this sort of sets a new sort of rigmarole for the live action video game adaptations. Again, I don't want them at all. I didn't want this show.
Yeah.
If the show vanished, I'd be fine. But this, at least for the live action stuff, I'm okay with this and what we've been seeing in the animated realm with Castlevania and Arcane and everything like that. I'm fine with. So it's a weird time where I'm okay with this stuff. If not even just okay, I'm actually looking forward to. Like, I'm looking forward tonight, popping popcorn and sitting down and 9 o'clock, boom, I hit play that new episode. So I'm excited to see where this kind of goes.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the weird thing, because I've given some thought also, where it's like on a practical level, you would imagine it'd be very likely. So the fact, good thing is this is not a Netflix show, so we don't necessarily have to worry about it being canceled randomly, like Netflix does. But on a practical level, you would imagine after maybe this episode or the next 2 episodes, they're probably going to announce, season 2 coming. And if what you're saying is true, which it sounds like it, that they're going to immediately have to adapt Last of Us 2. But the problem is, there's that time jump. And people are like, you just wait for like Bella Ramsey to age up. Well, no, I don't know if people realize she's 19.
Yeah.
Right now, she's the age that Ellie is in Last of Us 2. Mm-hmm. And she's playing a 14-year-old.
So you think it'd probably be 2 more years before they would even start? I'm sure I don't think there's. Yeah, I've seen that conversation too, where people were like, "Well, they have to recast at least her." Yeah. I said, "No, I mean, pre-production. Yeah. She's got other conflicting schedules."
I don't want them to necessarily recast because again, that comes with its own set of challenges. Because I think Bella Ramsey is an excellent actress, but the reality is this whole idea of like, you just maybe style her differently or wait for her to like age up. She's not aging up. She's 19. Like she's not aging up. She is aged. She just looks young. And so that is also going to be, I think, a challenge for them to make a convincing older looking Ellie, because I think she's 19 and she plays an excellent 14-year-old Ellie. But when that over those 5 years where she comes back with the short hair and the tattoo and all that, like it's just a whole different vibe. And I'm just curious to see how Bella kind of steps into that role, because that's a fundamentally different kind of character than I think she's ever played before. And not that I think she's incapable of it, but I think that's what I'm curious about. I have no doubt that Pedro Pascal can jump into Joel from Last of Us 2. Of course he can. And same thing with the gentleman who plays Tommy. It's more so just like that jump for her.
Yeah.
I don't know if she can do it. I'm willing to go along for the ride and see if they can try, but if I was them, I'd leave it alone, man. I'd just leave it alone for a while, maybe return to it in a future date, but like let it cook for a little bit, because and then figure that piece out, and maybe return to it in a couple of years or something like that. But I know they're not going to do that, because if there is going to be a Last of Us 2, it's going to be within the next 2 to 3 years probably. Chances are, and chances are they're going to start filming sooner rather than later. And Bella Ramsey looks the same now, so maybe if they cut her hair and they put her in that little blue dress shirt, maybe she looks a little older. I don't know. And maybe seeing her next to the Dina and all them, and Jesse.
If you maybe do the whole sort of being in. I never pictured her. I think it's since we don't see her that often. She was always just what she looked like in Game of Thrones. and she looks very similar to that. And yeah, that was years ago.
And she was like a kid then. So
and that was so maybe, but in the lore and on set in a sense, maybe they pull it off.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe once you kind of see her with Dina and then Jesse and them going through the Seattle and all that maybe it'll click a little better. Can you imagine Bella Ramsey fighting Abby? That's what I'm like, I don't know, man. But then again, now that I think about it, that disparity between Abby's strength and raw power versus Ellie's quickness with that knife, that could be exaggerated and thus make it even more impactful. Because in the game, there's pretty massive gap between Abby's size and Ellie. But you can tell they're generally the same age. And that, Ellie has to play it smart because on a physical level, she cannot compete with Abby. So, if they're going with Bella Ramsey going forward, it's the same issue, but I think maybe it just highlights that gap a little bit more. So I'm willing to see where they go with it, but I think they're fighting an uphill battle. It's not going to be easy because, that's the benefits, I think, of doing the whole mocap thing is you can age up people however you want as fast as you can. Becomes a little bit more challenging with the show, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. And I'm sure we'll bring it up if things get better or worse, or hopefully at least stay the same.
Yeah.
The next story we have, Sony has officially confirmed the launch window lineup for PlayStation VR 2, something that I'm excited for, but I just will not be getting on day one. So it's all it's through March 2023 of this year, actually. So from launch to March 2023, and it includes 13 new titles that haven't been announced for the platform before, and the full list. It's everywhere. We're gonna go through and just kind of mention some of these big hitters. A lot of ports. There is going to be a lot of ports. We were kind of just, we kind of knew this was coming, but there's the Creed game that was on PSVR 1 is being moved over. Demio, Gran Turismo we knew was getting a patch, which is pretty exciting because it's a free update to everyone who has Gran Turismo 7 already, which I like because at least it's not they could have really hammered you and made you buy another one. Horizon Call of the Mountain is obviously their biggest game coming from Firesprite and Guerrilla. Job Simulator, we have a Jurassic Park game coming out. No Man's Sky is also being reported to this because it's been ported everywhere, but it was ported to PSVR 1 as well. No idea if it's going to be a free update or complete relaunch. We're not really sure. Pistol Whip, Puzzling Places, Resident Evil Village is going to have that big update, which is supposed to be a free update to the PS5 version already, so good stuff there. Res Infinite is also a port. We have Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge that we saw a while back that looked kind of fun. Tetris Effect also being reported. Thumper being reported. The Walking Dead Chapter 2 is in, which was Part 1 was actually a big seller on PSVR. I tried it, thought it was pretty cool. I just wished at the time I was like, man, I wish there was more technology in this because it did look pretty bad. Job Simulator and Vacation Simulator, also some of the bigger PSVR games, obviously getting ported over. Again, no idea if there's going to be a upgrade path or if you have to completely rebuy those games. So yeah, it's a hefty list. As someone who I know I'm a little bit more. Well, I know you're excited for PSVR 2. I know you've mentioned before on the show, and
okay.
Personally, I know this.
Yeah.
You physically cannot enjoy it as much as you hope. But it's a mixed bag. I feel there's a lot of people know. A lot of people asked me, even people I haven't spoken to in a while, because they know I had the PSVR 1 and I was pretty excited for VR 2. But once I started seeing this list, though some of this stuff is cool, I think getting the Moss 1 and 2 remastered to PSVR 2 is really cool, and a lot of these games are things I want to check out. Nothing screams immediate buy for me. Nothing screams I need to get this right now. And overall, that's how I really feel with PSVR 2 in general. Where PSVR 1, I was a day one purchase for real. I was super excited. I love that. My thing is that they focused only on these games that are coming out. Some that we've seen on their previous hardware, some that are $4 already on competing hardware, and some that are going to be, the big boys, Gran Turismo, the Horizon, I'm not a huge Horizon fan, so I'm not super excited for that. Gran Turismo, same. I remember doing the Gran Turismo on PSVR 1, which whatever Gran Turismo it was, sick to my stomach. It was the worst thing I've ever done. But I'm excited to see if this can prove itself. I'm always more excited to see the experiences. I spent a lot of time when I was on PSVR 1 going through those apps that were there that let me watch, sporting events like in the middle of the ice and seeing people fly by me. I thought it was always really cool. Seeing something like that with the high quality screen that we've seen people talk about that's in the PSVR 2, it's apparently one of the best looking VR headsets because it's basically outputting 4K in the headset. That's something I'd be more excited to do. I mean, I don't want to do only a lot of the stuff that we've seen constantly. Though it's there, the Dark Pictures game Switchback might be exciting. I'm excited for this stuff, but this is a small fraction. None of these games make me want to spend $550 to play any of these, especially when some of these I can play, yes, at a lower resolution, but already I'm on PSVR 1. How are you feeling about the VR 2 lineup?
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on it. I think one thing, 30 games, that's a good number when you hear it. It's like, that's actually a really solid launch lineup. But yeah, I think to some extent it is kind of inflated by a bunch of ports. So once you kind of cut that down, you get like a better picture of like actually what is new represented here. And then once you kind of narrow it down, I think what ultimately matters is still present, and so that's why I say generally as like a launch lineup, it's probably a success. The reason for that is there is a major contribution from the first party, which you want at least one of those. So having Horizon there to be able to hit the launch lineup, I think that's very good for them. If they didn't have that, I would say that we're kind of in a rough position. But the fact that they kind of hit that, that matters. And then just having the third parties present there, and I think in terms of having different genres represented, I think they've done a good job with that as well. And that ultimately kind of matters. Is that's what you want. You want something from the first party, good third party support, and then kind of diversity of genre. And ultimately, they technically hit all of those. I can't speak to the quality of a lot of these games. I haven't played them. But in terms of kind of just diversity of genre and different IPs present, different developers that are supporting it, it's a good sign. I think this is good that so many people are on board off rip, because ultimately, I think they're still kind of in convincing mode with PSVR. They're still trying to get people to adopt, and they're making it easier and easier. I still think they need to get that price point down if they can one day. But with the getting rid of all that insane wiring, I think really helps a lot, making it more accessible, better controllers now, making it really competitive on a hardware level with the other major headsets out there. I think this is certainly a step in the right direction, and I'm generally happy as a kind of outside observer, happy with the offerings for it's a better launch window than I necessarily expected, but it is also to note like launch window, so that means the quarter that it's releasing. So a lot of these games may not be present on the day that it releases. But for me personally, so long as they can get like Horizon ready in time and maybe have like some major third party ones like the Star Wars game or Tetris Effect in their day one, I think they're in a pretty good shape to at least get the ball running. And at this point, regardless of the games that they offer, I think the people who are going to buy VR2 are going to buy VR2 ultimately. I don't know if these games are necessarily going to sway someone who was like not into it before, but they're like, oh, but a new Star Wars game, so got to hit that. I don't know if anybody's necessarily being convinced like that quite yet. So I think they've got what they need, and at this point they just don't fumble the landing, and then hopefully the hardware delivers in the way that they've promised. And I think they're going to be in good shape to kind of even exceed the performance of the first one.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. It's like I get nervous and I get excited because at some point I would like to get the VR too. But it's like, man, by that time, if I don't get it at launch, by the time I do want to get it, is it going to be supported? So I remember it was kind of hard to get the VR1 at launch, especially for about a few weeks, about a couple of months, if even. I've gotten 3 different emails from Sony saying that there was a available pre-order, and I haven't done it obviously because I'm weary this time. But that was not the case the first time. It was a pretty hard time to get that first one. I was just happened to be lucky. But for them to have emailed me 3 different batches opening for day one, not just for a queue, but for a day one release, I was like, wow. You guys were able to do it 3 times. You've messaged me that it's available to pre-order. That's a little strange, a little worrisome, I guess. But at the same time, it's just something I have to keep an eye on. But I'm being hopeful because I do think there's a lot of potential here, and it's a lot of cool hardware tech, which is something you and I love to just even mess with. Is new tech. So something so outlandish, something that sounds so wildly ahead, is something I'd be really excited to check out.
And yeah, that hearing about the kind of emails is actually extra strange because 2 things. One thing, they're coming fresh off of, and I think in many ways still kind of impacted by that kind of whole supply chain issue that has kind of plagued the PS5. So that's on one hand. So I'm surprised that they even have the excess inventory to even push for emails like that, to be honest with you. And also, to be honest, the amount of people, whatever that percentage of the general PlayStation pool that is interested in VR2 at launch versus VR1 at launch, you would imagine has to be bigger now. Just in terms of like name recognition, the late adoptees onto VR1 that are willing to jump into 2, that number has... I don't think there's so many people who were there for launch on VR, PlayStation VR, the first one, not a proven concept, never have seen a VR headset from Sony, but they gave it a shot and then tried it out and were like, no, I'm done with VR. Like, I think generally speaking, the people who were interested were probably at least content with the experience that Sony provided. And so you would imagine that the demand for this, it's not going to be PS5 demand, but you'd imagine it'd be higher than what the launch was the first time, especially with the supply constraints. So it makes me wonder, like, either one, they really have solved that supply chain issue that they were talking about. I saw some articles floating around about that, that things have maybe eased up a little bit on that, and either that is so fixed that inventory is not an issue whatsoever, or pre-orders are light. And that's not data either you or I are going to be privy to. But that, it just makes me wonder, just kind of speculating, like, is it excess inventory because they created so much because they anticipated demand, or is just demand much lower than anticipation? Which I think both. I think if I had to guess, I bet pre-orders are light and anticipation's a little low. Because I still feel like VR is just such an uphill battle, and I don't know if there's any like must-have hardware on or must-have software on there to make people like who are like just a casual PS5 player even remotely entertained jumping into that, spending on another $550. Not to mention the PlayStation 5 is not cheap, and so these people already just a lot of people got the PlayStation 5 late. Not that we're in the minority, but many people who wanted the PS5 couldn't even get that at launch. And so we're just kind of getting to a point now where maybe people have gotten it in the past year or so to expect them to fork out another $550 for the VR headset. I think it's kind of rough timing, unfortunately for them. Where I think on a PlayStation's books level, they're like, well, it's been like 2 years since we launched. That's enough breathing time for this new console. But you have to keep in mind, a lot of people didn't get it 2 years ago. So it's like, imagine if like the new Switch comes out, you spend $400 for it, and then there's a really expensive peripheral that comes out like 6 months after that. You might be hesitant to buy that because that not everybody got cash to spend on whatever newest tech a company shovels out in front of them. So I think it's also possibly a timing thing as well. It's just a weird time in PlayStation's life cycle where they just kind of got to a point where hardware levels have stabilized that I don't know if everybody's ready to jump into it. Like, I think there are enthusiasts who they could have launched VR2 on the day the PS5 came out and they probably would have got both. But I think it's kind of a hard sell for kind of your average PlayStation fan. And then that could also account for why you're maybe getting hit over the head with the emails because they probably just have more inventory than they like to sit at because they know the initial spike is going to be where so much of their sales are. That kind of day one, that's where the most marketing is going to be happening. That's when a lot of the visibility is going to be, and it's going to taper off from there. So they want that number to be as high as possible and to get it into as many hands as possible, because then that's where the word of mouth starts. And if the initial launch is tepid and doesn't really hit, it kind of dooms your entire launch unless you can turn things around later, which is not a position I think Sony's trying to be in. So it's interesting.
It is. It reminds me a lot of like what happened with Vita. And the only thing I will give to them, I know they're doing this for their sake. Also, you can only pre-order the PSVR 2 through PlayStation.com, their direct store.
Yeah, I bet that changes if they get it on Amazon.
That changes if you put it on Amazon. Let me tell you, I would have pre-ordered it because I knew it wasn't going to charge me up front. I think, if I remember, PlayStation Direct does, and then gives it back to you, then recharges you at shipping or whatever. But I just know a lot of people are more contempt of like, no, I'll get it when it's on Amazon. I'll get it when I can walk into GameStop and get it. I think that is a mistake for them. It'll eventually come to Amazon, but yeah, even I checked the website right now, it goes pre-order first only here, and it's nowhere else. There's nowhere else that has pre-orders. So I'll give it that. That's also kind of not the smartest move, but
yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, I think that's the case with a lot of people. That even me, let's say I did want my VR2, I don't necessarily got like $550 right now for it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, the ability to simply kind of pre-order and charge later, I think is kind of that pay now thing is a deterrent to people, and especially if it's something that you're not 100% sold on. I think people are willing to pre-order something then like, we'll see once we get closer to launch whether I want it or not.
Exactly.
But right now they're basically asking for like a commitment right now. You got $550 right now, give it to it. Like I don't know. It's an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. All right, our last story. This was kind of a multi-pronged thing that was kind of going on. I saw a couple of stories kind of swirling at the same time. It seems like we're getting a little bit of tension over there at Ubisoft. This is by Marie de Lassandrie and Brendan Sinclair over there at GameIndustry.biz. Ubisoft has apparently slashed its forecast for the fiscal year to date and announced a handful of other moves signaling a change in strategy for the company. So first, Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope and Just Dance 2023 were singled out in particular as underperformers, most notably in December and early January. Skull and Bones was delayed for a sixth time to early in its next fiscal year, which starts around April. And this game was originally set, or not originally, but most lately set for a March 9th release. Ubisoft has revised its project slate today, announcing the cancellation of 3 unannounced projects, in addition to 4 that it confirmed giving the axe last July. So it's 7 in total in the last maybe year and a half or so. In the context of the financial forecast announcing the cancellation and delay of several projects, Guillemot, or Yves Guillemot, whatever you call him, had told staff last week to give it their all and be as efficient and lean as possible, Kotaku reported at the time. He added, "The ball is in your court to deliver this lineup on time and the expected level of quality and show everyone what we are capable of achieving." And as you would expect, that did not go over very well, that statement. The exec faced some backlash with staff interpreting the statement as a call for overtime and crunch. In response to his comments, French Union Solidaire Informatique has called for a half-day strike at Ubisoft Paris on January 27th. So basically, to summarize all of that, Mario Rabbids 2 and Just Dance 2023 did worse than they thought they were going to do. They didn't have any major games to kind of fluff out the amount of money that they brought in by year end, aka Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. And Skull and Bones was pushed again, which I don't know if they're banking on that being a huge seller, but newsflash, it's not going to be. And basically, it sounds like he unintentionally put it on the staff to fix this issue. It's basically what it sounded like, and that's how people interpret it. It's like, well, it's up to you to turn this ship around, and people were upset about that because, as some people may know, there's already been kind of an issue and a bit of a battle with specifically game leadership or video game industry leadership about the kind of toxic workplace conditions, specifically with workplace expectations, compensation, crunch, and the unreasonable expectations of overtime and all that stuff. And some people felt that his statement kind of fosters that kind of environment and culture, and he's kind of tapping back into that energy. And he's since clarified that and apologized and explained that was not really his intention, and he was basically saying that his actual intention was saying that, like, if we're going to fix this, I'm gonna need your immense talent and creativity to fix this and all that stuff like that. So not a massive difference of what he said. But Steve, hearing the story, what did you think?
Yeah, it's kind of depressing because Ubisoft used to be such a high, it held up so high, right? But we knew, we almost kind of called that this was going to happen when we saw how fast they wanted to release games and how mismanaged a lot of their companies were. I mean, it's a company that's, pushed out 3 Watchdog games, none of them really being huge success. But, you did it 3 times, especially that last one was rough. But when you see them trying to specifically, like, all you released last year, if I'm not wrong, I'm sure I could be wrong, Ubisoft, the only game they released last year was Mario Rabbids and Just Dance, I believe. I don't think they released anything else.
I'll check on that.
In 2022. So this is what you were banking on. Mario, I'm sure they look at that, how Mario and Rabbids, the first one sold. But I think you have to remember, like, Mario and Rabbids, the first one, is on sale constantly for like $10 with DLC. Constantly in the eShop, it'll be like Gold Edition, $10. So sure, that first Mario and Rabbids kind of sold well, but at what price? Also, that was very early in Switch time when Switch didn't have too much. The Switch eShop now is just bumbled with tons of crap. So you're gonna get mixed up in there. I'm surprised that these are the 2 games you were hoping for. Just Dance Just Dance no longer even sells you a chip, from my understanding. There's no disc in case, there's no chip in box, it's only a download. So for them to... They knew that these weren't 2 big hitters. This is not like they were coming out saying an Assassin's Creed or something else big, or a new Tom Clancy didn't hit their financial records. It's kind of just... In the part that we know that Ubisoft's become, I think, too large to handle, it's also be doing the Activision thing of just... greenlighting everything, see if anything sticks, and then cancel. I remember it's come out since this article. They've announced one of the canceled games, and it was some free-to-play Fortnite-esque copycat that I never even remember being announced. But that was one of the games being canceled. So it's weird because there's so much that people are excited for. There is a community that's excited for Skull and Bones. I'm not sure how you're excited for something after Skull and Bones started development after Assassin's Creed 3. So we are...
Has it been that long, really?
Yeah, because because of the somewhat good feedback off the ship mechanic.
I they brought it back. Odyssey thing.
They brought back the ship mechanic in Black Flag, obviously.
Yeah.
And at some point between there, they were like, Skull and Bones started progression, and
wow.
Were 8 Assassin's Creed games from then. So something's definitely wrong with this. And the little gameplay video we saw, I think 2 months ago, definitely didn't show much. You showed some ship customization, that was it, but you didn't show any... I don't know, you didn't show anything else. So there is a lot of stuff going wrong at Ubisoft.
I have the 2022 releases too, by the way. It seems like they released 4 major games. They obviously, being as big as Ubisoft, they have attachment to lots of games. But in terms of major releases, you got Rainbow Six Extraction in January. You got Roller Champions in May. I don't know if you remember that one. And then basically Mario and Rabbids in October and Just Dance in November. So obviously none of those really lit the world on fire. And those are the major ones. If you point to some of the other ones, they had a whole bunch of ports of like Assassin's Creed Origins, Rocksmith, and stuff like that. So it wasn't a great year for them.
So yeah, that's a weak year, especially Extraction. I mean, that game was just spit up on Game Pass, thank God, because that was the only time I wanted to ever touch. I never wanted to play it, but I wanted to see what it was about, and it was terrible. I forgot that it was that year. Yeah, so if it's a thing that Mario's and Rabbids, a tactical kid game in a sense, wasn't gonna sell this big old hit that you think it was going to. I remember, I think 2 weeks after I saw that game on sale already for $40.
Really?
And I didn't really like the first one that much. I liked it, was interesting, but just no thank you. So it is unfortunate. I think I'm not sure even how to solve this Ubisoft problem. It's something they've been facing for a while. And we know that some of those higher-ups, executives, I'm sure, yeah, the balls in your court type deal, it's not... even when he re-clarified his statement, it was like, you're still saying it's up to you guys. I said, well, no,
Not
you
really.
need you need good management. You
Yeah.
need the greenlit. You need the right time. Skull and Bones needed to be axed a long, long time ago. I'm not sure what's still even there. So it is unfortunate. I think this Ubisoft shakeup, I always keep hoping that there's like a big change there. But now for years it's been one thing after another, whether it was accusations to crunch to bad management to too many projects. It's unfortunate, and that's the next big company that I feel, and it's unfortunate that you see this constantly. That's gonna hit with these huge layoffs and company shutdowns, and they have so many branches everywhere that something's gonna have to give if they're gonna keep claiming they're getting hit and hit and hit, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, when I see Ubisoft, I see people that are heavily reliant on a select few IP, and have been desperately looking for ways to change that, whether it be diversifying their portfolio or their sources of income, and it hasn't worked out well for them. Because like, say what you want about like Microsoft or something like that, where it's like, oh, all they have is Halo and Gears, and some people will throw Forza in there, but ultimately that's not true. First off, they have a lot more IP than that, and let's say they don't release those games for long periods of time, which they do currently. Microsoft exists, and so is an industry leader in technology, so they can get floated with that, and they don't hemorrhage money whenever they don't have a major release in a year. You know what I mean? They can get floated there. EA always they have so much ownership in these like kind of reoccurring sports franchises, so they're kept afloat no matter what. So even if they don't have like a major thing, same thing with Activision and Call of Duty. Nintendo, say what you want about Nintendo, but they always keep a first-party game on deck. They always have some hardware they're moving. They're always having something. Konami, even Konami has so many revenue streams that they don't release anything in the game industry, and they're still making money. And that's why it helps to have diversification of income and also diversification of portfolio that they always have in the background. But you have to think, annually, in terms of a major kind of mainstream release, Ubisoft doesn't have that. They're incredibly reliant on Assassin's Creed and to some degree Far Cry to kind of fill those gaps for them. And they've been trying to change that. Obviously, they've had I forget the name of that game that The Division. They've tried like small things here and there. They got I think Ghost Recon, that's also Ubisoft games. Those don't really light the world on fire. If you remember, they did the whole Quartz thing where they were trying to do the Ubisoft NFTs, and the whole crypto market crashed, and so that obviously didn't work out for them. So when I look at Ubisoft, I just see a company that is they seem to be aware of the issue, and they just don't know how to solve it, and the CEO seems to have foot and mouth disease and insists on putting that somehow on the developers, like they make the choice. Because you have to keep in mind, like, some of these games, it's not like people played it and they're like, these games don't work right. It's not so much that. It's games that nobody asked for in the first place. And I don't think that's fair to put on the developers. I don't think that's fair to put that on the coders and QA and the people who actually develop these games. Ultimately, it's up to leadership to determine what the next direction for the company is going to be, and what IP they're going to approve and what they're going to finance. And if they choose to finance the wrong things, that's on you. You know what I mean? Don't put that on the developers. And yeah, I don't think any amount of overtime can fix this issue. I think this is a problem where they need better IP ownership, to be honest with you. They need to own more things. And the reality is, not every game EA puts out is a hit. Of course not. But no matter what happens, there's that monster called 2K. You know what I mean? That kind of just is forever there. And so, it kind of just goes to say that, kind of no matter what, these companies kind of keep this kind of background ownership, whether it's these sports titles, whether it's these race titles, whether it's these first-person shooters. And Ubisoft needs something in the background that is guaranteed money for them, whatever that may be, and to kind of solve these issues. Otherwise, every time they're not able to fire on all cylinders, like some years they have really good years where they can launch, like next year, Assassin's Creed Mirage is going to come out. I think that's going to be a pretty good game. And so there's a good chance next year, but if Assassin's Creed and Far Cry are the only things that can really bail you out of this situation. That's a bad position to be in. And you need something in the background to help kind of fix this. And I think when it's all said and done, personally, this is just my guess, I totally think they're going to be bought out at some point. By who? I don't know. I know Microsoft's Activision acquisition is not an easy thing for them to get through right now. I know there's still quite a bit of litigation regarding that. I totally think Ubisoft's going to get bought out eventually, just because of I do not have faith in their ability to operate as an independent entity for much longer unless they dramatically fix this IP situation. Otherwise, they're going to have these quarters after quarters after quarters where people are like, underperform. Yeah, Just Dance is not going to do it for you guys anymore. It's not the Wii generation anymore, you know what I mean? Like Mario and Rabbids, was I also kind of surprised that didn't do well? Yeah, kind of, because the first one did so well. But I think I guess they misinterpreted the difference between like a sleeper hit, like an unexpected, like, oh, this is actually pretty good, versus like, no, this is what, like, we want a new franchise out of this. And I think they miscalculated that. I don't necessarily blame them for that. You know, it's a Mario game. Rabbids is huge in Europe. It's a no-brainer. It didn't move. So that tells that whatever they were banking on, which I bet was which was that kind of direct Nintendo collab, is a dub. It's done. Like, and so, you know, I wish the best for them, but they're in a tricky spot that I think that I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get solved until they just like get bought out. But I do know that like Massive is working on that Star Wars game. There's always going to be some Tom Clancy something. Assassin's Creed is going to have 1,700 new games in the next couple years with that whole I forget what they called it, but you know, they announced a whole crap ton. You know, the Project Hex and Red and Jade and all that. They have that Avatar game, so they do have things to turn around the most immediate future. But I don't think that solves the macro level issues. I think that solves that the most immediate, like, how is their Q1, 2, and 3, maybe a 2023 is going to look. I think it's going to look fine. It doesn't solve their larger issues that they're way too reliant on so few franchises that, mind you, are already on shaky territory. Because Assassin's Creed just died. Unity, you remember Unity and Syndicate, and again, I like those games a lot, but they were already dealing with the diminishing returns of Assassin's Creed. So we've already shown historically that like Assassin's Creed is not like a guaranteed hit. Like it's been doing well for now. I know Valhalla was financially good for them. Origins was very critically well received. I think Odyssey did what it needed to do. And so it's been in a decent spot for a bit now. But I think it's kind of a scary position to be like, okay, this is our cash cow. And not super long ago, our cash cow failed us. Like, that's kind of a scary position to be in. So I'm hoping they can figure out something quick, fast. Because I generally like Ubisoft. I know people make fun of them a lot. But Ubisoft actually has a number of franchises that I've actually quite liked, personally. I love Assassin's Creed. I liked The Division quite a bit. I think it's like a fun turn your mind off game. Same thing with the Tom Clancy games, some of them. I liked, was it Breakpoint? Yeah. Breakpoint was kind of fun. Wildlands wasn't too bad. So they have things every once, and I love Far Cry. So they have things that kind of like pop up here and there that I actually really do enjoy. But they have major structural issues that I think, at least with current leadership, either they have to purge current leadership and completely 180, or they're going to get bought out. Those are my two guesses. I would not be surprised if, you know, in the next 2 to 3 years you see, you know, Sony attempts to acquire Ubisoft or something like that. I would not be surprised at that. Or at least a major consolidation between Ubisoft and another company that maybe isn't a major publisher, but or like an EA. Not saying that EA is going to do that, but like something that sized. I wouldn't be surprised by at all, because I don't see this going well for them long term. I think in the most immediate, this is not like a GameStop situation where it's like a GameStop shit, like, I don't know if they touch 2024. And I know we've been saying that for a long time, but that weird stock thing that they did bought them some time, admittedly. But this, you know, Ubisoft's going to be okay. I think long term, this is an issue they're going to have to address one way or another. And I don't, with the way that they're talking right now, don't see a plan to do so. They seem very much like, developers figure it out. And it's like, what do you want them to do? Like, code harder? You know what I mean? Like, come on now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's unfortunate though.
Because I like Ubisoft. And generally, I don't want to see them folded into a larger entity. Because then they become an IP farm. And I don't think that's good for anybody, really. Because then effectively, they're just going to become an Assassin's Creed machine. They're going to become... Like, you'll never see them take a risk again. And hey, I have no interest in Skull and Bones. But do I admire their willingness to make a pirate game in 2023? Sure. I respect that, because I know not many devs on their sides would be willing to do that, who are delusional enough to believe in this weird ship combat mechanic from like 10 years ago, to actually sell a game and to delay it 6 times as if it's Dead Island 2 and still actually say it's coming out. Good for them. Good on them. And stuff like that's going to evaporate the moment that they're acquired. There's no way, let's say a Sony buys them, there's no way they're spending a dime on a game like that. Like, are you serious? Like, no way. But, you know, I wish them the best. I really do. I know you and I, we generally want to see these developers do good. And I know what all this kind of signals to me, as somebody who works for a company right now that is going through the same thing. The tech space in general is getting hit right now. This just screams layoffs to me. And I'm really hoping it doesn't go in that direction, because I know how hard the tech industry in general has been hit, but especially like the game industry, you know, gets like murdered constantly by some of these developers. So I'm hoping they kind of turn things around, especially with this next year, and we'll see how all that plays out. And if things evolve, we'll be sure to report it to you guys.
Absolutely.
All right, so that was the show this week. 3 big stories. We're finally well into 2023. The games are going to start coming out, I think, next month, right? February is where things really kick off for the most part. And I'm looking forward to see what the industry looks like this year, especially considering the fact that one of the major players, Nintendo, we know so little about their 2023 slot right now. They got Breath of the Wild 2.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, you're right. Tears of the Kingdom. I know they got Metroid. God knows where that is. I know they got that Kirby remake, but then that's it. So I'm excited to see what they do this year. This is supposedly, allegedly, the year that Microsoft's going to start coming back, hopefully. And then, you know, PlayStation always got something in the tuck, so I'm not worried about them. So, yeah, 2023, here we are. So far, it's looking solid. We haven't had any major releases yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And we'll see you guys at the next episode.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Take care.